Hello, and welcome to Season 11, Episode 131 of the Cartridge Club's Game of the Month podcast, where we bring together members of the Cartridge Club community to discuss our monthly playthrough. If you're new to the club or are interested in participating in future months, please join our community Discord or follow us on Twitter at Cartridge Club NA. We love to see the hashtag Cartridge Club used whenever you talk about one of the games we've selected. I'm Captain Algebra, and on behalf of our rotating pool of hosts, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Additionally, on behalf of the entire Cartridge Club community, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon club backers: Joel Boyce, Canadian Grooves, Christopher Rohr, Ross Ringo, Caleb J. Ross, and Dean Lasagna. Thank you all so much. You're an integral part of why we can do this each and every month. In July, we played an N64 classic, Conker's Bad Fur Day. So joining me to talk about the game are J-Chip.
Howdy.
Top Spot.
Hello, hello.
And Ryan.
Hello.
All right, so first question, and let's start with J-Chip. Was this the first time playing Conker, and did you finish the game?
I did, yes. This was my very first time playing the game all the way through.
Nice. Top, what about you?
No, this was actually my second time. I had played it originally when it came out, and went through it again for the Cartridge Club.
Nice. And Ryan?
Oh, this is about my fifth time beating it. So,
Wow.
And yes, I did beat it.
Awesome. Yeah, this is my first time playing it. I've been wanting to play it for years. I've actually put it in the console multiple times and tried to start it, and I just didn't get hooked. So I was like, this is the perfect time to play it. So there are two versions, right? Is it just the two? The 64 and the Reloaded?
As far as I know.
Okay. So what'd you guys play on? Ryan, we'll start with you.
I started originally on the Rare Replay on the Xbox because I've never really even dabbled with Rare Replay. But then I quickly shifted to the original N64, the cartridge that I purchased on launch for this game.
Nice.
On the original console.
Very cool. Top, what about you?
Yeah, I had already beaten it on the N64, and although Rare Replay was an option, this, just like he had said, this was a perfect excuse. I had Live and Reloaded on my Xbox library digitally, so, and I'd been wanting to play it too. It's like, well, no better time than this, so I used that chance to go through the remake for the first time.
And J-Chip.
I played the N64 version.
Okay, nice. And I play the N64 version as well. So, Top, are there a lot of differences other than the graphics being better between the two versions?
Yeah, definitely big difference in the graphics. But otherwise it's very, very much the same thing. There's a moment very early in the game where they do one slight difference just to kind of subvert your expectations, and they call it out as basically, well, this is the only thing that's going to be different. So,
okay.
But then it sticks right back to the script of the original. And the controls are a little bit refined because now with a second analog stick that they did serve that as the camera control, makes it a little nicer than on the N64. And they changed the controls just slightly. You kind of, well, if you remember, that game is actually built on being a multiplayer third person combat game. So the controls kind of mimic that. So you actually go in and out of a combat stance, kind of more like Resident Evil style. So it's not just one button to attack. You kind of go in and out of a combat stance, but it doesn't drastically change anything. It's just slightly more refined, I'd say.
Well, that's cool. I think there's just enough different, though, that I'd be willing to play that version. To at least check it out, especially like if the controls are slightly better, and we'll get to the controls later on. I was not a huge fan of them. But let's get into the story. And before Ryan shares that, just to remind you guys that the humor is a huge part of this game, and there's going to be lots of spoilers. So be warned. All right, Ryan, tell us the story of Conker's Bad Fur Day.
So how this story really kind of starts, I'll start with the main villain here real quick, because it involves a Panther King, a Black Panther King, who he needs to fix his table because it spills his milk. It's got 3 legs. The 4th leg apparently is broken off, and his head council, they decide the best idea to fix that is to put a red squirrel for the 4th leg. So that kind of starts the villain arc of the story. Well, Conker's story starts by him getting drunk at a pub, and and calling his girlfriend Barry to let her know that he's going to be partying all night, so don't wait up for him, kind of thing. He then wakes up the next day, hungover, and trying to find his way back home. And that kind of starts his whole adventure, trying to work his way back home to get to Barry. And you stumble upon all these wacky characters along the way. He's kind of a person who wants to help everybody out, but in doing so, he kind of makes things worse, and then just carries on his own way, which kind of also alludes with the humor. But yeah, along the way, you'll also see a lot of movie references. There's a lot of parodies in this game, which I enjoy. But for the gist of the story, that's kind of what it is. You're trying to make your way back home, while if you die, you see yourself in the credits being tied up and gagged as a fourth leg for a table.
Awesome. So what'd you guys think about the story? Were you okay with it? Was it enough? Did it matter to you? I'm someone who story doesn't matter too much to me in video games. I'm more about the gameplay. So J-Chip, let's start with you. What did you think about the story?
It's kind of bad, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think the story is like. I feel like the writers in this game were like just trying to make the jokes stand out rather than like the character development or anything like that. So that didn't really bother me. Like, all I really cared about was just seeing how funny this game was going to be rather than how well the story was.
Oh, for sure. Top, what about you?
Yeah, I kind of mimic that. I will say that I do like the movie parodies are fine, somewhat dated, but it also it seeks to lampshade some gaming tropes too. Like it's a lot of like fetch quests and helping people, but I actually Conker doesn't really want to do it unless there's something in it for him. And so instead of all these bits and bobs of whatever other collectathons might give you, well, he'll do it, but for cash. So I think that's a pretty funny subversion of what you would get out of most heroic video games.
And Ryan, what'd you think about the story?
I mean, I like it because it's so dumb. I mean, if it's the jokes and the humors of the story with, it doesn't take itself very serious at all. As an example, the goal from the villain is to find a red scroll to replace easily a wooden leg, but it's, like I said, it's dumb, but I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't care about the story too much, but I just love the humor. And I knew it was supposed to be funny. I didn't know how funny it was going to be. And I definitely laughed out loud many times while I was playing this game. So let's get into the gameplay then. So you guys kind of already talked about, he wants to get cash, right? He'll help you out as long as you give him cash for whatever you're doing. And so you go through these different chapters, doing things for different people and collect cash. So there's quite a few different chapters. There's Hungover, Windy, Bats Tower, Barn Boys, Slaprano, Ooga Booga, Spooky, It's War, and Heist. So there's a whole lot of different missions throughout them and stuff. So we can kind of just tackle them as you guys want. Is there a certain chapter that really stuck out to you that you really liked that you wanted to talk about?
Slaprano.
I think that's got to be everyone's favorite.
That's the highlight. Right? That's got to be like the main thing in that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was in the marketing when the game was coming out, and I can speak from this because I'm a huge N64 fan. I was hyped for this game when it was coming out, so I clearly remember them saying like, "You're gonna fight a giant opera singing piece of shit in this game," and it's like came out in 2001. So, I mean, I was in my early teens, so I'm like in the right age, right? This is like the era of South Park starting up and everything like that. This is, hitting everything for what I want at that age, right? You're marketing a giant singing turd and other stuff like he's going to get drunk and then you're going to have to use that pee to put out things that are on fire, or like it's great.
It's wonderfully juvenile.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the best part about this game. I don't remember when it was coming out. First time I really saw it was in college. A buddy was playing it, and he was actually playing that part with the Mighty Pooh. And I just remember briefly watching him, but he didn't remember what to do. So he had played it before. I'm like, you get to fight a pile of shit? Okay, I need to play this game.
And then how do you defeat him? Of course, with toilet paper.
Of course.
That is just so hilarious.
And you gotta flush
Especially
'em.
the first time, man. God.
Mhm. So good. That does bring up one of my issues with the game, though, is aiming. So you have to throw, right, like Top said, you have to throw the toilet paper in his mouth when he's singing, but there's no like reticle of where you're gonna throw. And so you go to the B marker, you press B, and then he gets in the stance to throw the toilet paper, and you almost have to like throw one to see where it's gonna land, and then shift your aim. What do you guys think about that?
On the remake, I do believe there's a little bit of a reticle, but the timing is awfully tight regardless.
Right.
Sometimes he doesn't keep his mouth open for very long. So it wasn't super easy, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you kind of just got to be lucky with your throws.
Well, you're right where you kind of have to shoot it to see where it's going to land. And then as the fight goes on, it gets harder. His singing picks up the pace. So you have a little bit less time to do it. And you don't go back to the same spot too, because he'll cover the B spot with a pile of poo. But that's not the only spot where the aiming is very questionable or bad or very good at all. It's pretty bad throughout the game.
Right.
I think a lot of it has to do that the fact that this game was like the original Conker game, I think was like announced in like 1997. And it didn't come out until 2001. And I have the promotional tape because I think I pre-ordered a game at Toys R Us. So there was a VHS tape that actually showed Conker, after the success of playing Mario 64, every like 3D platformer coming out for the 64, I was all about. So that became like immediately on my list, and then you just keep seeing as the years go on, it get renamed to like 12 Tales, and then eventually, after years of silence, they say, yeah, it's coming out, and it's gonna be this completely different from what we originally shown. So I think consideration, because that 2001, I think the PS2 is already like out and this game's coming out, right? I think this game was, the way I kind of even consider it to at this state in time, that game was probably getting rushed into development. Because they just want to get it out. It's right at the end of the N64's life cycle. They're probably trying to sneak it out under Nintendo's nose for what they're putting in this game. And at the time too, I didn't think it was dated at all. At the time, I thought it probably just was like with everything how it was coming out. But by today's standard, there's definitely some frustrations with it being inverted, and that's not just the only time. Not just the shooting. There's like some swimming that can be in, like the hitbox detection is terrible in this game. Falling is brutal.
Fall damage for even short distances. And there's barely anything you can do.
It fits the Rare difficulty narrative. Rare has never been known to make easy games, but there's definitely a lot of like frustrations that replaying it this time was like, well, this is a lot harder than I remember it being. So
right. And these type of controls are very typical for 3D platformers of the era, right? It's not any different than like the Mario 64 or the Donkey Kong 64 or the Banjo games. Like, they struggle with controls, they struggle with camera. That was just kind of the thing with 3D platformers because they were new and they were trying to figure out how to do it. So it could be excused a little bit, but I think, like you said, going back to them now, it makes it a little bit more frustrating. You mentioned the swimming, and there was a part that pissed me off so much, and that was
propellers?
The propellers, because you can, like, the swimming's already bad enough, and it was just kind of hard to tell where you were too in relation to the spinners.
It stayed the same on the remake as well. I got cut in half a lot of times. I kind of had to move the camera completely sideways and get as close as I could to even know where I was in relation to those things. So
it was that, and like the swimming level where you had to find the different tunnels. That got annoying because I didn't know exactly where I was going, and like
because it's kind of like a maze, right?
Yeah, and you have very little air to deal with, so you got to get those bubbles real quick.
Yep. And there's that thing in the tunnels that can take your health down pretty fast too, so you have to avoid that. Find the bubbles to breathe, but also find the direction that you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
While dealing with the terrible swimming controls.
I thought that was worse than the propellers, because the propellers I got used to it pretty quickly after I died a few more times.
Mhm.
But that tunnel, I kept getting lost and I got frustrated.
Yeah, maybe I just got lucky in that tunnel. It only took me a handful of attempts, but I bet you I got cut in half 10 to 15 times.
Mhm.
Just constant.
The way I try to look at the propellers is I go make some right-handed. I always go try to swim alongside
Mhm.
the wall, and if I
Yep.
see the blade going, I kind of like follow the way up with it. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. Where if it's when it's coming up,
You
kind of
almost want
follow
to aim
instead of-
towards the blade because by the time you get there, you might hit the
Right.
gap.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I would try that, but then the depth perception was so far
Exactly.
off. Like I'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine," but no, I got cut.
Yeah.
And believe me, when I say this too, that's just the way I approached it. I'm not saying it's easy, and like I said before, I feel like some of the hit detection in that where I felt like I didn't even think I was like
Mhm.
there, and I'm getting sliced. So yeah.
So remind me not to change the topic. We'll keep talking about that. But on the original 64 version, how are game overs and restarting handled? Because in the remake, it still had lives. It still went through the game over. But regardless, it's almost like infinite continues because whether you died out of a life or had to restart, you still basically went back to the exact same spot. So it's just kind of a nominal difference. There really was no difference other than having to go through the game over cutscene between a game over and a loss of life. But it's pretty forgiving on putting you back, pretty close to where you were. Was it the same on the other?
Yeah, it's pretty much like with the exception you get that cutscene with the Panther, and unless you get to the ending, then there's no cutscene if you die in that final battle. But yeah, it's pretty much where there's a part right at the beginning too where you can get a tail that gives you 10 extra lives.
I didn't know that.
But that doesn't continue if you restart the game. It goes back to your normal 3. So, but you're right. It's like as soon as you die, you just start right back at where you left off.
Yeah,
So at least that's good because there was a lot of dying going on.
I was really worried. So you obviously the first time you game over, you meet Death, right? And he tells you about the tails and stuff.
Great.
And then I didn't game over again until the beach area at the end when you're trying to escape. And then I was worried because I ran out of lives. And then I realized, it really isn't that bad. There wasn't much of a difference at all. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, the 10 tail, that was right in the first area. There was like that fenced in area that was yellow and it kind of had the cliffs behind it. So if you're up on the cliffs and you jump at one point, a light bulb goes above your head and you press B. I don't know if he does an anvil or something, but he breaks the area below him. And yeah, there's a tail there that's 10. So every time I started up the game, I always went there first to get my 10 lives and then continued on. J-Chip, did you find those tails? I know Top didn't.
No, I didn't.
No. Ryan, you knew about them, right?
Yeah, I found it. It's right by the cheese where you have to get those cheese and bring it to the mouse.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other areas, Ryan, that you know of where you can get a lot of lives at once, or is it all just the one tails?
I only found that one, and I don't recall. I have the strategy guide, but I didn't bother looking for any other areas for that stuff. So
yeah, because that's the only one I found. So I figured there might be more, but honestly, the game isn't that big, so it is pretty easy to always just go back there. Or I knew that it would always, whenever you turn the game off, it would start you from wherever the area that you left or ended up at. So I would just like make my way there last, shut the game off, and then I would start there. So it wasn't too bad. Another area I want to talk about would be the Ooga Booga chapter when you have to sacrifice. Was it sacrifice the dino baby?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, it was super cool. You get this dino baby, right? And you're using him to like eat the cavemen and stuff. And then you put him on
them.
Yep. And you put him on that pedestal. You're like, what's going to happen? And then boom, sacrificed.
You gotta do it so you can open up the that's what the god wants, right?
Yep.
What's the sacrifice?
I did feel a little bit bad because I like that dino.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about the game, right? It's part of the humor that he doesn't really quite care. He doesn't like the people he's even in with in this game, even though he helps them along. He doesn't quite care.
Getting him on the pedestal was kind of annoying because like you get him on there and then he just walks off the ramp. So you got to get him on there again.
So I never have any problem with that. Top or Ryan, do you have a problem getting him on the pedestal?
Not that I recall, but we each may have had an individual struggle somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So he just kept falling off for you, J-Chip?
No, he just kept following me back, like
Oh.
as I'm going down
Yeah.
the ramp.
He didn't want to go.
Yeah, he didn't want to stay put.
Well,
Which is
you were his mama, right?
Yeah,
he
you
was,
you hatched his egg.
But that was kind of surprising because I felt like he was terrible at following me. Like, because when you first get him, I would get so far ahead of him and he wouldn't move. I'm like, what is happening? I think I actually restarted.
And there
the
would
game
also
at one point.
there would also be instances where I want him to be up there, but he's too busy eating the minions and shit. And it's like, come on, man, you got to get up here.
Yeah. So now I remember. So when you're in the club, this is what I didn't like. You had to get drunk.
I got stuck on the club for a while.
Yep. You get drunk and then you have to like push those barrels. Is it barrels?
No, it's rocks.
Rocks.
They're rock dancers with the dance with the rock ladies.
Yes.
So they
And
turn
then-
into a rock, right? And then
Yes.
pee
And I
them
was
into the
like,
hole.
You got to pee on
"You're
them,
too
right?
slow.
Yeah, you got to pee
Yeah,
them in the hole. Yep.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
pee him in the hole, and I'd be too slow or I'd miss, and then they'd wake up and they'd hit you. And then
Yeah.
you'd have to go get drunk again and do it all over.
That was the only part that I had to look up because
Yeah.
it just wasn't clicking for me. And there's a few areas in the game where there's the topography makes no logical sense. You push them down a hole on the first floor and they end up falling onto the second floor.
Right?
Like it doesn't make any sense to me, and so that made me struggle too.
Yeah, you had to kind of get close to them to do it too, to make sure. Otherwise, your stream wouldn't be powerful enough, and they come back and they bonk you.
Yep.
So, and then you have to go back and pop an Alka-Seltzer, and then go get drunk again to do the whole thing again. So
Mhm.
yes, I understand that frustration as I experienced that part myself.
And as great as the drunk parts were, they were hilarious. I just hated having to move him because it seemed like it was very random when he would stumble. And you're like, okay, come on, just keep moving. Like,
The stumble
get
and
to where I
puke,
need you to
yep.
be. Like,
yeah,
come
puke,
on.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, that was frustrating.
There was a part I had more frustration with. I think it was definitely one part. I think I was climbing to the top to get the money inside like one of the tree areas. I want to say maybe it was not the tree, but it was me climbing to the top of the castle where you're climbing the ropes. Maybe it's the clock area. And the frustration was with the camera, and I think it was more along the line of how the camera is positioned in this tunnel area. With other 3D platformers on the N64, you have much more wide open area, so you can pull the camera back, you can rotate it, but because you're in much more of a tighter area, the camera's also then a tighter spot behind you, which made the platforming to, like, you know, the areas where maybe you're fighting off the bats or just trying to get to the rope or something like that, just trying to climb the area makes it a lot more difficult. That part kind of burned me. Didn't die too much, but it was definitely a lot of like miss, reload, maybe get some chocolate, climb back up kind of thing. So
Yeah, the camera bothered me a lot, specifically, like you said, those tight spaces. I think when I streamed it, I ended towards that part where you were climbing up, and I couldn't figure out where to go. There was right before the cow section, and I thought you had to climb all the way to the top of that, but then there was that little ramp that had like poo on it, and I was like, I don't think I could make it up there. It looks like I'm going to slip. And then I realized I did have to go there. But yeah, there was like those times where the camera's trying to be right behind you, but it couldn't. And they would make a really tough jump, and I would miss one of the strands. But fortunately there, when you fell to the bottom, it just reloaded you in the poo hut, and then you could just go from there. There was no like death or anything. You didn't lose health, but definitely struggled with the camera in that case.
there also, I would say anytime you had to get like a gun involved, like the camera can like throw you off your whole, like you go to like first person mode and it can like completely bonk your aim, just like recentering when you're like pointing at a teddy, and it completely, it wouldn't kill you, but you're definitely taking unnecessary damage because of how the camera then recentered you when you were like lining yourself up for something.
Top J-Chip, any issues with the camera?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just not necessarily a fair game as far as difficulty. There's definitely, like, I wasn't a big fan of the fall damage because it is a little easy to slip off of things, and then you're just kind of, bonked. There's not a whole lot you can do. If you fall too far, it's going to take all your health.
Yeah, I had a problem with the fall damage as well. And it felt like, there'll be some instances where I feel like I can make a jump, but turns out, he takes damage by something that's not really that high up.
Yeah.
One instance where the fall damage got kind of annoying is like when you have to bounce on the sunflower's tits to get the money. That got kind of annoying to get up there because I didn't know how to get him up there, but eventually I did.
Dude, that was another spot. The controls were terrible there. I felt like
Yeah.
I tried so many different ways, and it like sometimes I'd try to press A, sometimes I didn't, and I felt like he reacted differently every time. I was
Yeah.
like, how do I get you to bounce high enough to get that cash?
Like
And the thing
these
is
days,
that, like I said, screw it, and I just decided to continue the game without it until I needed the money
you needed it, right?
to progress through the game.
Like I'm
So
not a big fan.
I thought it was like the same way of like when you're on the slab and they just toss you up there. I thought it was the
Right.
exact same way, but it's not.
Right. I'm not a fan of taking control away from the player, but some things like that would have been fine scripted. You did everything you needed to get to that point. It would have been okay for it to just be a scripted moment.
Yeah.
I think they want to just have more of the joke that you're jumping on some boobs.
Well, I mean, they could have still scripted it that way, but yeah.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, they could have just had you be able to jump on them anytime you wanted, and it would do like a quick little cutscene or something, and move on.
since we're airing out all our grievances here,
Oh, we got lots.
I have another one. When you're trying to escape the Teddy's facility, and there's lasers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The positioning and maybe the cameras, boy, it is brutal. I've died probably the majority of the time more than anywhere at that point. And honestly, if it wasn't for the strategy guide pointing out like, hey, at this first area, crawl underneath here, underneath the laser, and then the one area where it says you climb to the top of the box, hold Z down, then jump up, delay your jump, and then to slowly hover between the middle lasers. That would have been, I probably would have died even more. They said if it wasn't just like noted in the book, like this is probably the best way to do it.
I by that point in the game, I forgot you could crawl, so I was tanking a bunch of hits I didn't need to.
Yeah, that one took me forever to figure out that specific hover one, Ryan. Like I got hit so many times. I would try to like just do like a barely jump over it. Sometimes it would work. Sometimes I'd get hit. And then finally I thought of, oh, maybe I could try to hover. And there we go. J-Chip, do you have a problem with that one?
Oh yeah. And just like Ryan, I decided to say fuck it and look it up.
Yeah. And add in the fact that part is timed when you're escaping.
Yeah.
Right? Like if there was no time, okay, like I can take my time to figure this out. But there's that 4-minute timer?
4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, you have to get through that laser part, and then at the end of that, you have to fight some more teddies, and then you get outside to the for me was the most frustrating section of the game when you're trying to escape the beach and you have to deal with the rocket launchers and the teddies. Just I hated that part. I was so pissed off.
Yeah, by the time I got to that, I was like, this game's kind of dragging. I'm kind of ready to be done.
Let me ask you, how did you beat that part, the escaping the beach part? Because I can relate. In the past, I clearly to this day remember that part giving me the most frustrations until I figured out, and it's not in the strategy guide, I just did it and I kind of like not forgot it. So I just want to ask you, how did you come about beating it? Because I remember that taking me hours to get by. So it's a very small part too, just to escape the beach.
Right. So first I just tried to run through it. I'm like, okay, let's see if I can just avoid these. That didn't work. So then I did try to take them out. And so like I took out the first couple and I rounded a corner, and it's actually like the last area where like 4 or 5 of them pop up. And I tried to like go slow, but then I missed a teddy behind me and he killed me. So then I finally had it mapped out where all of them were. And so basically I killed all the ones in the first section, rounded the corner where it kind of went down, and there's those couple wooden structures. And I just kind of tried to inch my way forward, and I knew where they were going to pop up first. And then I would go to first person mode, shoot one of them and quickly aim at the other one and shoot it, and then inch forward again and then shoot the ones that were left. And then I finally made it through. But it took, at least 15 tries.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same way I did.
Now, I don't know for sure, but maybe on the remake they rebalanced it a little bit, because I clearly remember being stuck on the war chapter in my first playthrough back in 2001 for like a long time. And I will say I breezed through it, but I sure didn't get stuck. So, maybe they rebalanced it a little bit, or maybe I just got lucky because I didn't make it to. It wasn't too hard when I went to it.
All right, so Ryan, what's the strat?
It's literally just run and jump. Literally just keep hop and jump.
I tried that.
No, literally, like, so if you see them, just run, jump. And it's not just run, stop. It's like once you see them, jump. Once you see them, jump, because they're all going to fire at you at the same exact time.
Okay.
And it took me 2 tries to get it through on this playthrough.
Nice.
Because I was just like, okay, what's this last part about it? I forgot they all have bazookas and they're all shooting at you, and they all try to, like, if you see one, don't run towards them, run this other way and just start jumping. Just run and jump. Continuous, just hop, jump, and then they don't continuously fire. They will, have to reload themselves. So it's kind of like run 3-4 seconds, jump, run 3-4 seconds, jump, and then you'll just walk through it, because it's not a very long part. It can be very frustrating though if you just try to take it head on with these guys. And yeah, like, just the second you see one, that's not the case. You kind of want to try to, I won't say distance yourself, but you kind of want to just not go towards them, if that makes any sense. I know I just said the opposite, but it literally is like, you want to try to get all 3 to lump together, because then you're going to get around the fence, which is going to those guys aren't going to get you. So the next 3, you're going to be setting yourself up for that. If you stop, you're dead, kind of thing, if that makes any sense too.
Yeah. And I think I was just constantly jumping, where I wasn't like waiting a little bit before I jumped. I just wish you didn't move so slowly with the rocket launcher or bazooka, because like I wanted to keep it out so I could like shoot a guy right away, but you're so slow and there's that time. And at this point, I didn't know how long that section was, because I'd never played the game before. So I mean, it could have been, a couple minutes longer or more beach. So I just had to try to kill them all, and eventually I got it. But yeah, it was frustrating.
Yeah, that's by far away the hardest part of the game is the war chapter. The tribute to Saving Private Ryan, and yeah,
I'd agree. One thing I did like about this game is they did try to mix things up, so it wasn't all about platforming and stuff. So one of those cases was the racing section. What did you guys think about the racing?
I got stuck there for a little while, but I made it to eventually. I thought it was pretty good. But a lot of games from that period and slightly after started to throw in different kinds of things like that. So it may have been one of the early ones to do a race like that.
We're talking about the like Ooga Booga one?
Yes, in Ooga Booga's area.
The dinosaur reminded me of that chapter. It's in Donkey Kong. No, it's in Mario Kart Double Dash. The dinosaur part where there's a dinosaur that walks by. They came out after, but it's definitely, I don't know if it was inspired or not.
I knew it looked familiar.
Yeah. It seems it's just one of those things. And there's no real stopping of it. You just have to kill everybody. Really?
That's you just have to hit them with your frying pan. Yep.
Yeah. And eventually when you get the last one down, then it switches past. We have to go right or left. I know, like I said, I remember it being tougher before, but I think this time it was actually not too bad for me. So
yeah, I actually thought that was a really good area to do.
Yeah,
I didn't really have a problem with it either.
I didn't struggle with it too much. I mean, I lost more than I thought I would, just because I kept hitting that stupid dinosaur. And with the hit detection, it's not perfect, right? So there's sometimes where I'm like, I should clear it, and I didn't. But I just thought it was nice that they kind of mixed things up.
And he's kind of randomized too.
Yes, exactly. So speaking of things that are different, though, my favorite chapter, I think, and at first it wasn't, like, it was kind of one of those. I mean, I loved the Mighty Pooh part, but like looking back, I really liked the spooky area when you turn into a bat. I thought that was a lot of fun. When
your great uncle turns you into because he's a vampire, right?
Yep. And you got
the tribute to Dracula.
Yep, Dracula. Exactly. And then although the villagers are coming to attack him, so he makes you a bat, and you have to go carry them in and put them in the grinder so he drinks the blood.
Actually, you have to poop on them first.
Yes,
then and then carry them to the meat grinder to throw them in. But.
And you get a little brown eye view camera.
And then he drinks so much blood that he explodes.
And he explodes? I thought he falls into the grinder himself.
I can't remember which one was it?
One or the other.
Yeah.
No,
I think
yeah,
he felt- I think he
his
eats too much.
perch.
That's right.
breaks.
He got too fat, right?
Mhm.
So he fell in. All right. See, Ryan, that's why we have you on here. You've played it more, and I forgot. It's been a couple weeks.
But then you have to escape the place from the zombies.
Mhm.
To,
You have to find
get the
what?
3 keys.
Three keys. Yep.
Yep.
And the zombies just keep coming back, and they were frustrating, I think, on the way to the castle, but I didn't have too much trouble with them in the castle when you're trying to escape.
Yeah, it's just I think basically you kind of had to learn where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Just yeah, I agree with you. There was some frustration, mostly with probably the camera angles because the guy does tell you, Greg the death, tells you as he gives you the shotgun that like you have to shoot him in the head. It's the only way. Otherwise, you just seem to keep slowly eating your way towards you. You know.
Yep.
The strategy I found best for that outside of the castle was to climb on top of a tombstone and shoot down.
Yep.
But yeah, I tried to, I think, just get by him so much, with the exception, I think the last key I really had to kill a couple just to get past. But yeah, it wasn't so bad in there.
And you guys knew about the laser pointer, right? To
Mhm.
aim. Okay.
Pull down Z. Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Or
I
R.
discovered that partway through. I didn't know about it. I thought it was. I thought the aiming was somewhat random because I
Mhm.
hadn't discovered that yet. But I learned it during that section.
Yeah, because that made it so much easier. Because I didn't know
Mhm.
about it at first, and like sometimes I'd miss. I'm like, what is up with this aiming? And then I press Z once. I'm like, oh, that's better.
You know, that kind of is another knock against the game, and I know I'm notorious for being the negative Nancy always on these podcasts, but it's kind of the knock of I would say another knock of the game is it's almost not so clear. It's almost like they want you to have your aha moments a lot in this game. Like the game doesn't really tell you where to go. Namely, I'd say there's a part right at the beginning where it's like you can go left or right, and Conker, I think, kind of gives you a hint. He goes, "Oh, that place stinks." So I think if we go to the right, so I think you were supposed to go to the left, but it isn't quite. There's no map, right? There's you can get to a part. You can get all the way to the part where right before I think even Ooga Booga, where you're gonna get stopped by the guards because you don't have the $1,000 cash, and then you're like, shit, I guess I gotta go back and do all this crap again, and then you have to swim through the blades again. But the game,
You don't.
you don't.
Don't know. And I at first I was so upset. So I swam through. I got to the guards and have the cash, and I was like, son of a bitch, I have to swim through this again after dying many times. But no, there's a like fence near you with, I think it has a sign, something about poo,
Yeah,
and if you
you
jump
can go
over
the other
it,
direction. Yeah,
yep, it gets you to
Also
back to the poo
outside
hut,
of
right?
the right where the pool is.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did not know that, and here I am being the expert. But like I said, just something along this line here. Like I did have to resort to the strategy guide a couple times because the game is very obtuse, with what it is.
Yeah, I think that was one of my biggest complaints, was just not always knowing where to go, which I think also brings down the story a little bit. I felt like if they added more story elements where it kind of led you at least what area to go to next, that would have helped out.
Well, and also like the first area, well, there's the windy area, and then the area where with the barn and everything. Those are kind of open, but then after you get through that whole open area and pay that toll, it starts to become pretty linear. So it's kind of a strange change in the structure of the game from there forward. I assume that's got to do with. I'd always assumed that had to do with the development, like that first area with the rat and the cheese and the boxes and the barn and the sunflower. That is very much more like a collectathon area than any other area in the game. So I always thought that was, that's a holdover from their first iteration. And then after you get through all those opening areas, it just kind of becomes chapter by chapter, beat by beat.
Yep.
J-Chip, did you ever get lost?
Yeah. It got to the point where I'm just like, you know what? Let's go to GameFAQs.
Yeah,
Did you go to the print? Did you go to the printed type up strategy guides too, J-Chip?
No, I did not. I just use the internet.
That's what it's for.
Right.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to do it, right?
And like, I feel like there's one thing I do have to praise this game is that it lets you skip the cutscenes. at least you have to watch them first. But like, I do appreciate when games let you do that, because there's other platformers that don't let you do that, and it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, if you keep like you keep dying and then you have to watch the same cutscene over and over again, that just makes things extra frustrating. So I'm glad they allowed you to skip stuff. So are there any other areas or chapters you guys wanted to talk about before we kind of move on to like some of our funniest moments?
I mean, how can we not talk about the heist, right? That was like immediately following the hype of the Matrix with the.
That is true.
It feels like they tacked it on because of that. Like it felt like the war should have possibly been the final chapter,
right?
But that's probably, I don't know. I would say that might be the funnest chapter. It's not.
It is where it kind of opens up for you, and you get to be a badass for a while.
Mm-hmm. They and this goes back to a little bit of the obtuse side. I thought I could only jump. It's because it's been a minute since I've played this game. I thought I could only jump between the pillars once between them, because the light bulb stops appearing. But no, you just keep. You just want to keep probably doing the light bulb. You just keep pressing B and doing the Matrix jumps between them. So,
which was a lot of fun. I loved that part. And that's probably honestly the first time I noticed all the references to movies. I'm sure there's a ton of other ones that I missed.
Oh, probably,
that I just like, I really didn't realize. And I was like, oh, that's totally the Matrix. And then obviously the final fight is definitely right out of Alien.
Oh yeah. And I had forgotten about it. So the final fight and how it ends was a pleasant, funny surprise to me, because I had forgotten that that's how it ended.
Yep. And I liked the little callback to Mario 64 when you had to spin the alien around by his tail.
Hey, if you're gonna steal from the best, right?
Sure. Yeah, whatever you say, Ryan.
Yeah.
There's actually a video on YouTube that goes through all the movie references. Oh, nice. And it's kind of cool seeing everything that they referenced.
So what else?
What else was there? In the very opening of the game, it's Takeless. A Clockwork Orange.
Which I've never seen.
With the milk.
Yep. Yeah. The milk and him sitting in the chair just talking to the camera, looking into a lens. Yep.
Yeah.
There's the Terminator. That's the haystack.
Oh yeah.
There's even knockoff Terminator beat, like the song. It's kind of like it's very much in. It's not. Everything's just a smidge off. Like there's Bram Stoker's Dracula. What the whole your uncle or great uncle who's the vampire, Saving Private Ryan, the Matrix.
I could also see that racing level to be kind of a nod to like the pod racing scene in Star Wars.
I could see that. Mm-hmm. I liked how they put those in there. Since we kind of mentioned that final boss already, and we talked about the poo and stuff, were there any boss fights you struggled with, or any boss fights you really liked?
They were all decent. The last boss, it took me several tries. To know when to block and when to hit, I was struggling with that. So it took many tries until I got it. But as a final boss, it shouldn't be a one-time thing. It's okay for it to be a little hard.
I struggled at first to figure out, was it Bugga the Nut? Just because you had to hit him in the crotch. And like I didn't realize that I had to do that at first, and like how to get it to do it, because I think you have to press like Z and then A or something like that. It was like a combination of buttons.
You have to charge him in the groin, right?
Yeah,
and then you have to chomp like a giant chunk of flesh out of his butt cheeks.
Yeah. So that one took me a little time to figure out.
It took me a little bit too, but once you knew it, it wasn't too bad.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, probably the puppet or the puppet girl probably one gave me a little bit of frustration.
That was pretty tough too. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, where you have to, because eventually, like you have to use the camera.
The opposite problem. You know what to do, but actually pulling it off is hard. Instead of not knowing what to do.
See, I had a really good strategy on that one.
Hide behind the walls.
There's like those tunnels, right? And so I would just set myself in one of those tunnels, and just because you can, I think when you were in first person mode, the C buttons left and right would kind of strafe. And so she would be shooting at me, and then I would just inch out. I would inch out a little bit and shoot and see how close I was to hitting the mark, and then change my aim slightly and then go back out and shoot again. And then I would be able to hit it.
So in the remake, while you're doing that, they give you the courtesy of making the tunnel invisible. Because the camera's there. Does it do that on the original?
Mm-hmm.
It does.
It makes the tunnel invisible.
Yeah,
No.
like
See-through?
the camera can see through it while you're inside of there, so you can kind of see where she is.
No,
It's-
it wasn't. No, you
Okay.
couldn't see through it. No.
All right, good deal. Well, that's another nice change for the remake then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where you have to shoot off the guns. The weapons change every single time on it,
Mhm.
and then you have to
Mhm.
shoot the thing in the back, the giant teddy bear that's in the back. That's a
Yeah.
robot. Yeah, see, like I basically had to approach that. I couldn't. Cap, were you doing it for where you would just you turn the gun facing forward and then press C to drift out and then shoot
Yes.
it that way?
Yep.
Because I tried that and I think I got like reverse stuck, and I died out. So I'm like, okay, so I had my best strategy for it was to just make sure I was straight on and then just
Mhm.
kind of shoot it and then quickly back up into the wall and do it.
Yeah.
It took a while, but you have infinity ammo and
Mm-hmm.
the wall. You're not, as long as you stay behind the wall, you're not going to get hit. So
Right. J-Chip, do you have any bosses stick out to you at all?
Okay, I really like that puppet fight.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the bullfight was pretty funny,
Yep.
where you have to basically send the cows to the slaughter.
Mhm. Well, you had to feed them prune juice first, right?
Yep. And they're
Yeah,
shitting their
yeah.
brains out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yep.
I mean, of course, Great Mighty Pooh is probably going to be the most iconic boss fight in the game, so
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that has to be like in the top.
I mean, his song is catchy as hell too.
Yes,
It
it
is.
is. Ryan, maybe you can sing it for us.
I actually can, but
Can you?
I know that like whole song. You played so many
wow.
damn times, and
Mm,
that I think even amongst friends who didn't have a 64, but we played the hell out of the multiplayer. They just wanted to see that fight, and like it's so memorable, especially with the song. It's like I said, it's an opera singing turd. He says stuff like "Have some more caviar," and he throws the ball of poo at you. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's the best. It's the best boss fight in the game
for sure. It is. But I wanted to give some chat. I want to talk about the other ones a little bit because they were
Sure.
some good ones, you know. So, but yeah, Mighty Pooh has to be everyone's favorite. I don't know how it couldn't be. All right. So before we move on, I did want to talk about funniest moments because this game, like we talked about, humor is a huge part of it. So we've already talked at length about the Mighty Pooh. All right. Were there other moments that were just laugh out loud funny that you loved? I'm going to start. One of my favorites was when you get to the guards and they think you're a squirrel, but you convince them that you're an elephant. And then one of the guards is just taking a shit during this whole part. And I could not stop laughing.
It's kind of hard on a replay because you already know what a lot of the beats are. So
Right.
yeah, we've talked about some of my favorite things already. As far as the dialogue is concerned, though, it there's a lot of dialogue, which is great for a Nintendo 64 cartridge game, but it's not. I don't feel like it's polished. It really seems very improv-y and like friends BSing around with a lot of like inside jokes and stuff that I don't necessarily get. I'm an outsider. I think you should somewhat write your humor to an outsider too. Just as far as the individual character dialogue, not the big beats, but yeah.
Right. J.J. Ryan, were there any certain funny things that stuck out for you?
Yeah, the one that made me laugh out loud is the conversation between the paint bucket and the pitchfork. Because like there's such a dig to him, and it's like, come on, guys, you gotta be like a little nicer to him. So I kind of felt bad for the pitchfork until he started attacking you. But then like he goes to kill himself, and it's like it's the way it's handled is fucking hilarious. Because it's like, what a double whammy. Your life sucks and you can't even end your own life.
Yeah, they were some of my favorite side characters.
Yeah. And then he kind of helps you in the boss fight. And then he just kind of leaves for pretty much the rest of the game until the very end. So I found that kind of funny that he just shows up randomly.
Maybe it's it's like I said, it's because I've played this so many times. It's like the jokes for the most part, but one thing I kind of remember the most that I a little bit forgot was the first time you use your piss to kill those demon guys, and then they eventually resort to getting into that giant steam robot that you have to dump You're dumping poo in it, right? I can't remember. Yeah, you hit the valve and it cools it down, and then you take your bricks and you hit its nuts. They said like the first part, I think they press a button and the balls drop, right? I think that's what happens, and then I think when they're trying to escape, they're like, oh, you're gonna have to go through the back door, and they're like, it's really messy down that way. You don't want to go that way. They start making butt jokes again. So yeah, that part I would say.
That's a good one. All right, I think that covers most of that game. So I did want to talk about the multiplayer. Did any of you guys have a chance to play the multiplayer ever?
Not in particular, no.
No.
Tons of times, yes.
Yep. And in fact, actually, I only played the multiplayer. I think a buddy had it in college, and we would play the multiplayer. So I played that way before I played the main game. So Ryan, tell us a little bit about the multiplayer.
So there's like 7 games in the multiplayer, but the one that always stands the most out to me is the refugees versus the teddies. And for what people don't realize, I listen to this, but teddies is spelled Tediz, and they are clearly a reference to the Nazis in this game. Yeah, so it's kind of terrible because you can play as the teddies and the refugees. You're trying to escape to France, right? But it's terrible because it kind of almost resembles like the Jewish people trying to escape like the Holocaust.
They're not very sentimental in this game.
But it's a lot of fun. The multiplayer is a lot of fun. That game alone, whether you're being like the teddies shooting at them, you get your choice of you can be the machine gun guy, or you can be a bazooka guy or the sniper guy, or if you're the teddies, you're there to escape. It's kind of almost like American Gladiators, right? Where like whatever the big force is, where you have to get past all the barriers. And there is an area in the middle where you can blow up the teddy bears if you can get to it. You just got to play it up right, and they'll blow up all the teddy bears. Because you can do 4-on-4 for this one. So that one stands out by far and away. It's the one we played the most because it's honestly it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we played Total War the most, where it was just everyone against each other trying to kill each other. And I mean, you could pick between a bunch of different characters, including the teddies and stuff. I just love the different weapons available. I mean, there were submachine guns, there was a bazooka, there was sniper rifle, throwing knives. But my favorite by far was the katana, because you could actually move pretty fast with it, and you can jump with it, and you would like slice a teddy apart, and like its stuffing would go everywhere. If you fought another enemy that wasn't a teddy, it had blood go everywhere, and it was hilarious. You can play with bots. So Top and J-Chip, I highly suggest, even if you can't play with other people, just play some of these with bots. It's a lot of fun.
They clearly changed it though in Live and Reloaded. They kind of made it more of a Xbox Live battle royale, like that,
which isn't available anymore because it is an OG Xbox game. So
right. So
I heard good things about that one, and I thought I watched a while ago too, because I'll say this: I was a huge, and I still am a fan of this game. So spoilers for the ending of this podcast discussion. One of the main reasons why I bought an Xbox was that there was rumor talks of a Conker 2. And I was like, all right, I'm in. And then they're like, well, we're going to give you a Live and Reloaded first. And I'm like, fine, I'll buy it again. So I bought that, was kind of turned off by the artwork and such. And the fact that the multiplayer was completely changed for more of this Xbox Live-y sort of one. And then eventually just killed Conker 2 and they canceled it. But there's some rumors of what the other Conker 2 was just going to be a straight multiplayer game, because I guess the multiplayer was really well loved on Live and Reloaded as well.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. So it sounds like 64 is the best way to do it then, where you can play with the bots and stuff. So yeah, I highly suggest it. So we've talked about the good things about this game. We've talked about the bad things about this game, which are very similar, honestly, to a lot of N64 3D platformers of the time. So I'm curious where you guys would rank this compared to the others. So I think the main big ones would be Conker, Mario 64, the Banjo games, and Donkey Kong 64. Are there any that I'm leaving out?
Yeah, there's like
Not for the
Rocket.
big
There's
ones.
like
Yeah, there's a bunch, but
Duck Dodgers.
Right, but I feel like those are the main ones.
yeah.
Right. So how would you rate those? Yeah, we'll say both Banjo games, DK, Mario, and then Conkers. Ryan, you start.
Mario, Conker, Banjo, DK.
J-Chip?
Banjo, Mario 64. I have not played Donkey Kong 64 yet. And then I would have to put Conkers at the bottom.
I will also chime in. I've yet to play Banjo Tooie. I mean, I've fired up just to make sure everything works, but because I didn't get it until like, I don't know, probably like 5 years ago. So I still have never quite dabbled with Banjo Tooie yet.
Yeah, I also have to mention I have not played Banjo Tooie either. So
Okay.
Banjo Kazooie, in my opinion, is top tier.
Got it. Top, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna put Conker at the bottom as well. Even though I'm not a giant Donkey Kong 64 fan, it's a lot of fun to play. It's just tedious to complete. But honestly, I don't think Conker fits in well as a 3D platformer. It's really much more of an adventure game that just happens to be in 3D character control, because it's the goal isn't like to maneuver your way here and there. It's to figure out where to go and how to progress the story, and all the items are, context sensitive. You don't have an item pouch or whatever, but it's really a lot more like an adventure game than it is any of these other collectathons or 3D platformers.
That's true. That makes sense. You have to do so much platforming in the game. That's why
you do
lump it in there.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, it doesn't stick out, but you grade those other ones on that merit, and on that merit, it doesn't stand up the same way the others do, because you're playing it for the story and for the humor. You're not playing it for can I climb to the top of this thing or not?
Yeah, I think I'd put my order DK64 be number one. I love it. I know there's a ton of collectibles, and that's a huge turnoff for some people. But as a kid, I loved collectathons just because it made the game longer. And then I would put Banjo Kazooie second. I have not played Tooie. Then I'd probably put Mario 64 and then Conkers last. And I just felt like between not knowing where to go and then really poor camera and regular controls throughout the game, it made what could have been a fantastic game kind of tedious at times.
I will respectfully disagree with Top. I do think it's a 3D platformer more than an adventure game. What I like, actually, why I probably rank it higher than the other ones, is it isn't a collectathon. And
it's decidedly not a collectathon.
Yes, the only thing you really have to collect is the cash, and only about $1,000, really.
Right, because at the end you end up with a million. No matter what.
Yeah, all the other ones are obligatory. You've got to get the first grand to get past the bridge. But yeah,
but I think that's kind of why I like it. I like the fact it's more linear of a game, and that's why I think I rate it higher over. It's one of the main reasons why I've yet to finish Banjo or DK 64. I made it pretty damn far in the game, but I got stuck with needing to get something for like Lanky Kong or something like that, and I just I'll come back to this, and I have yet to do so. And that was definitely, I think, some frustration even with replaying Banjo for the Cartridge Club, that the collectathon, you need to collect a lot to keep advancing the story. Well, this one literally is just the money, and that's it. And then you can keep progressing the story. My runtime on this last playthrough was 11 hours. To me, that's great. I like that a lot. It's not something I put hundreds of hours into. It tells its story, and I had fun. So,
yeah, it's a pretty good length. I think my time was about 11 and a half hours, and I was okay with that. Top or J-Chip, do you remember how long it took you?
I was looking up my tweet on it now. Around 10 hours. I don't remember exactly.
Okay. J-Chip, do you remember how much long it took you?
I think it took me 9 hours to beat.
Man, you were flying.
Pro gamer here.
Yeah. Guess we got to learn from J-Chip from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, just look it up and we'll go through it faster.
That's true. All right, so why don't we get to our overall thoughts? So I got a couple questions for you guys. So we're going to we'll start with J-Chip on this one, since you hadn't played this before. J-Chip, would you play this game again?
No. I think this was a good one and done kind of thing. If I ever want to go back to this, I'll probably just watch the cutscenes instead. But I don't see myself playing this game again.
Okay. Top, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I never really saw myself playing it again, except for wanting to check out the remake and joining the club here and playing along. Not that I had any problems with it, but once the surprise is out, there's just not as much to it.
Mm-hmm. Ryan?
Yeah, I'll probably play it again. Like I said, every I don't know, a few years or so, I get the itch to play it, and the fact that it isn't a long game, I kind of just, even if it's just what's great about it too. I should also state this too. And I can't speak for Live and Reload, and I imagine you can. There's a chapter section on the main screen when you're selecting what option or what game you want to play, game 1, 2, 3. There's also a chapter section. So if you just want to relive a chapter, you can just go and play the Great Mighty Pooh level again just to show it off.
Yep.
So like I said, I see myself probably doing it again, not anytime soon, but every once in a while I'll get the itch to fire this game up. So yeah.
Yeah, I would maybe play the remake. I don't think I'd ever play the N64 version again. It is nice that there's those chapters, which is cool. So you just replay the stuff you want. Honestly, I'll play the multiplayer a ton, but yeah, I don't know if I'd want to do the whole main campaign again. So with that, I want you to rate this game on a scale of 1 to 5. And unlike Curtis, I do allow halves and quarters. Okay, so feel free to do that. This time, let's start with Ryan.
I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I probably would have given this probably like a 4.75 or a 4.8, something like that after it launching. Because I absolutely, the first time playing this back in 2001, absolutely love this game. And I still think it's one of my favorite N64 games of all time, probably top 3 even. But the frustrations in the replay, I'll say it's about 4 out of 5.
Top, how about you?
Yeah, it is a well-made game with a lot of technical expertise. I would never take any of that away from it. But if you are a modern gamer, it's for sure a step backwards. So I would go as down to a 3. It's not going to tell you where to go. It's not, if you're not playing with a guide, that experience of figuring it out is the game, and it doesn't give you the same tools that modern games do.
J-Chip?
I would give it a 3.5. Like, it's a solid game, and I'm glad I played it. It's pretty funny. But my main issues come down to controls. I feel like it just doesn't control as well as other platformers from the same time period.
Yeah, and I would also say a 3.5. If I was just going off humor, I give it a 5 out of 5. Even though it's very juvenile, that's just kind of my humor sometimes. But I find it very funny. But yes, controls, not always knowing exactly where to go, was definitely a big downfall for it. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for me. And then last thing, just are there any other games you would recommend people play if they like Conker's Bad Fur Day?
I mean, I feel like the obvious one is Banjo-Kazooie, but I feel like you've already probably played that.
So
I'm trying to think if there's anything like humor-wise, like maybe the
Right.
South Park game or something like that. Maybe I would say the
Yeah.
South Park maybe RPG one that came out for like the PS3.
Yeah,
Is the humor, I would say.
The Stick of Truth.
Stick of
Yeah,
Truth?
that's
Yep.
it. Yep.
And then there's what?
Fractured
Butthole. Is
Yeah.
there a third one now?
Yeah, Snow Day.
Okay, there we go.
Is that an RPG though?
Yeah, it's
Yes, it
it's
is
an
RPG.
action
Okay.
RPG.
Okay,
But at
cool.
least
I wasn't
humor-wise,
sure.
it fits in.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
very dumbed down, easy RPG where I think it's not very difficult. It's very much walk through and then humor kind of.
You played that, Cap, didn't you?
The RPGs, no.
Okay.
I did play South Park on PS1 and N64. I played through that. That one's a lot of fun. Again, it doesn't have the same humor, I would say, because it doesn't have like as many of the cutscenes and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think that'd be a decent game to play. But that's more of a it's almost like a first person shooter than it's not a platformer at all, right? Because you go around like throwing snowballs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty much
Pee
a
on the
Doom
snowball.
clone.
Yes, you can pee on the snowball. The alternate, because every weapon there has an alternate fire, and the pea snowball was one way because you actually hear them unzip and pee on it. It's pretty good. So there's that kind of humor. I mean, honestly, any of those platformers we've talked about that you haven't played, I mean, but most people have probably played, Donkey Kong, Mario, Banjo. Maybe Banjo-Tooie would be the one that people had probably played the least. Because I hear more about regular Kazooie than I do Tooie. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Cartridge Club Game of the Month podcast. All right, so let's look at the next few months for the Cartridge Club. Ryan, what do we got coming up in August?
So for August, it was the Patreon vote, and the Cartridge Club Patreon selected Papers, Please.
Awesome. I've not played that. Any of you guys played it before?
Not yet.
Okay.
Nope.
And J-Chip, what about September?
We're playing Days Gone, a survival open world game with a bunch of zombies.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. It's so fun.
I never played it, so I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. And then Top, how about October?
It looks like in October is going to be another spoiler sensitive game, Doki Doki Literature Club. Don't look that one up, just play it.
Yes, it is such a weird game, but maybe maybe I'll play through it again. I don't know for sure yet.
It's dirt cheap, so
It is, yes. All right. So again, if you'd like to get involved with the club, I'd encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Cartridge Club NA. You can also visit our Discord for all kinds of discussion about past, present, and future games of the month. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters. And if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. And again, I want to thank all my guests, J-Chip, Top, and Ryan, for joining me on this podcast. So why don't you guys do a little bit of plug where we can find you on the interwebs? J-Chip, what about you?
You can find me on YouTube at J-Chip Show. And you can also find me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there. And I'm also pretty active in the Discord.
And how about you, Top?
Yeah, I go to my Top here, but my real handle is TopSpot123. If you Google that all one word, you'll find everything I've ever made.
Awesome. And Ryan?
for myself, you can find me on Twitter with the handle of itsRocketSauce. You can also find me in the Cartridge Club's Discord. I have an Instagram with the same handle of itsRocketSauce. And I will plug, because I'm always there too, I'm always in the Retro Fandango chat. One of the constant members always in the chat. So
nice. And you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, everything, Captain Algebra. And I'm also in the Discord quite a bit talking about the game of the month. So to everyone listening, we look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Thank you for joining us. CC Unite.